Welcome on in, everybody, to this edition of Fighters Fury here on 790 The Ticket. Sorry for the delay on this one. Obviously, I had a big weekend for myself. It was my wedding anniversary, so I was away this weekend. So that's why we didn't get results on Sunday morning of the Poirier versus Hooker fight. I did watch it live. It was the last thing I did on my honeymoon, and I'm sure you guys can make the jokes about how lame that is as it is. Is that it wasn't even my honeymoon, my anniversary, excuse me. That the last thing that I did was watch two men in a cage in their underwear fight while my wife slept by my side. But we did have a fantastic time. It was a great time. Did a lot of improvisation because we were supposed to be off on a cruise in the Bahamas and, reliving our honeymoon, if you will. But it was, pandemic is what it is. We kind of kept it local, staycation style, and had a good time. A really good time. But wanted to get a recap in on this one because I thought this was an important one to get a recap on. One, I love watching Dustin Poirier fight. That dude's absolutely fantastic. And second of all, it was a bona fide fight of the year candidate. Him versus Dan Hooker was absolutely amazing. And I said last week that I don't pick against Dustin Poirier, that I'm very biased about when it comes to that. I love his coach, Dia Davis, a friend of mine, think the world of him. I think those two as a tandem, as good as it gets in the sport. Everybody talks about, some of the chemistry that people have over the span of mixed martial arts. I think that, Poirier and Dia Davis, as far as striking is concerned, is as good as it gets. It really is. And, you think about in fights like this with Dan Hooker and how many Dustin has had like this, where they're all just storms of chaos. And we'll get into the nitty gritty of the fight in just a second because it was fantastic. But these types of fights speak to Dustin Poirier. He is the bane of slugfests. He is born in the chaos. I talked to him about this probably last August. I talked to him at American Top Team about this before he fought Khabib. And that, he just embraces that he embraces the chaos. And it just seems as the crazier the fights get, the better he is. I don't know what it is. I don't know how he can remain so damn calm, how he can remain so poised in the craziest types of fights. Now, just put it in perspective for you guys. These are the people that he's beaten and have just been hellacious fights. You're talking about Max Holloway, maybe the greatest featherweight of all time, one of the greatest volume punchers of all time. Eddie Alvarez, the only man to hold a Bellator championship and a UFC championship. Justin Gaethje is now where Dustin was as interim lightweight champion of the world with a chance to fight on Khabib Nurmagomedov. He beat him, out-violenced what everybody seems to think is the most violent individual in the sport of Justin Gaethje, a guy who out-savaged Tony Ferguson. He stopped him and out-savaged him. Like that is the type of animal we were talking about here with Dustin Poirier. So while the Dan Hooker fight started off and it looked bad, like, he was getting, thwapped with leg kicks consistently. Dan was pouring on a lot of volume. There were just still those heavy shots, even in the midst of all of those shots landing for Dan Hooker early on in the bout. Dustin was out there and he was still hitting him with heavy bombs up against the cage and just showing him, you're not going to out-tough me. And how that didn't already put something in Dan Hooker's mind as we were going into round two. Round two happens, and maybe you'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of rounds better in the sport than that between Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker. The back and forth those two had. Dustin came out guns blazing. Dan Hooker put it back on him, started implementing the knees into it. Very close round. I probably thought, I remember watching it, I was like, I want to give that one to Dustin. I want it to be 1-1, but I know that's the fan in me talking. Like, there was part of me that was saying it. So I thought that we had an absolute classic here and that we were having a razor-thin fight here, but it was still 2-0 Dan Hooker going into it. But man, if you are Dan Hooker and you are a man who is on the come up, and this is supposed to be your coming out party. You're 30 years old, and you're taking on Dustin Poirier. This is your second real war, as he had one with Paul Felder, but there's no fans cheering you on. There's no hometown crowd behind you. You could start to see that Dan Hooker's will was starting to break. You could see that it was starting to go a little bit. The point of it being is he started trying to take Dustin down and was succeeding in taking Dustin down. Now, he wasn't really doing much with it, because you don't go into these fights thinking, oh, Dan Hooker's going to take him down. Like that's not, we didn't go into this thinking that. And so you have Dustin Poirier in a spot where he's going for submissions. He's going to look to end the fight. He's hitting him from the bottom with vicious elbows. He's got him cut open something nasty. Dan Hooker's looking real bad. Dustin's looking like no first prize himself. And then the fight the fight's starting to wane on. Dustin gets him up against the cage at one point. Really looked like the fight could have been stopped. I mean, it's a credit to Dan Hooker that he was able to get through that, but it looked like, Dustin was going to finish it up. And I think that if he hadn't already gone through 2 rounds of hell early on in the fight, that we would have been in a spot where, yeah, he probably is finishing him off. But you got to remind that this is not only a question of Dustin Poirier going out there and he's trying to finish the fight, but he's also trying to survive himself. And so, yeah, it really was. It was getting brutal. By round 4, that was a bludgeoning by Poirier. One judge had it at 10-8, and we got to the final bell. Poirier again, round 5. It just didn't seem like Dan Hooker had really much of anything left, and it was crazy because there was a point where you were looking at, and Dominic Cruz talked about this back in round 2, where you're like, there's 3 minutes left in round 2, and this is a 5-round fight. How is this going to continue? And it wasn't really possible for Dan Hooker to put what he put out on Dustin Poirier and keep going. He's just not used to that. Poirier is. Like, Poirier has been in there with guys where he is getting in, and the fights seem crazy, and they seem like the guy who's just dishing out is just dishing out. Maybe not as much, but he's dishing out maybe I think what are the stronger blows, and eventually that's going to add up over a 5-round fight. And that's what it is, man. And his ability to get these shots and his accuracy in what they're like, these fist tsunamis that he's in there with. You marvel at it when you watch it. You're just like, how? And you feel like he's taking these shots because everybody looks at, I just don't think that this dude gets the credit that he deserves, And I said this leading up to the times where it was, he finally got his shot against Khabib, where he was like, 25 minutes to make life fair, that whole thing. Because, you think about a guy who back, 6 years ago was knocked out by Conor McGregor at featherweight, and, has had 2 losses since then. One was a freak knockout loss to Michael Johnson that he ran into, and the other one is to maybe the best lightweight of all time. That's crazy. And then you go and you look at the lineage of guys that he's beaten. The current interim lightweight champion of the world, the former lightweight he's beaten 3 former lightweight champions of the world, 1 former featherweight champion of the world. That's insane, man. That's an insane resume for DP. It really is. And all the props to him, man. I really, really marveled at him yesterday. A lot of the questions were, what's next? What's next for Dustin Poirier? This is what my answer is for that. Whatever the hell he wants to be next, honestly. Because I feel like with the continuous great fights that he's gone on there for, and you're talking about, you want to talk about exciting fighters, right? This dude has been fight of the night. One, he's had, let's say, since his Michael Johnson loss in 2016, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fights. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fight of the nights in 8 fights. 5 Fight of the night's in 8 fights. Probably should have been 6 if Eddie Alvarez didn't illegally knee him. He also has a performance of the night bonus in that, so he has 6 bonuses over that case. He obviously has the 1 loss to Khabib. So out of his 7 wins in his last 8 fights, 6 of them have had bonuses. That's so crazy. So, and one of them was a no contest, not by his fault. The dude's a stud. I mean, he's box office every time that he steps into the octagon. So what is next for him? You know, everybody goes to the mouth of mixed martial arts, Ariel Helwani, and Ariel goes, he says, Poirier versus Tony Ferguson. Who says no? And if I'm Poirier, I'm like, I'm saying no. Why do I got to fight Tony for? Let me ask you something. Let's talk about what's down the pipe, okay? Legitimately, this is what's going to happen, all right? Nurmagomedov and Gaethje are going to fight in September for the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. If Khabib wins, he's not fighting Tony Ferguson. He's not fighting Dustin Poirier. He's not fighting anybody other than Conor McGregor. That's that. I don't think Conor's going to fight Dustin. I don't think Conor's going to fight Tony. I think he's going to sit and wait until September. This whole season of McGregor thing, the damage is done, my friend. It's not going to happen. So for Poirier, you're going to say, you're in this position right now, right? And you're like, oh, we'll go fight Tony. All right, I guess if he wants a paycheck, go fight Tony. Fine. But here's the thing. What if Gaethje wins the lightweight championship of the world? What if he wins? Because a lot of this stuff is based upon who wears the crown and who is the guy at the top. Oh, I think a big reason why Conor doesn't want to fight Dustin Poirier is like, how could I do better? Why would I want to fight Dustin Poirier again? He's clearly gotten a lot better. He's clearly better at 155 pounds. Why in God's green earth would I want to fight that guy that I knocked out in the first round 4 years ago? Why would I want to try and do better than that? I probably won't. If you're Dustin Poirier, you're thinking to yourself, hold on a second. I am one of the best lightweights on the planet. I've had 6 fight of the nights in my last 8 fights. And the interim lightweight champion of the world, the guy that everybody dubs the most violent man in UFC, I stopped that guy. And he has a good chance to go beat Nurmagomedov. If he beats Khabib, who has a better argument at the championship than Dustin Poirier? Conor's win is over Donald Cerrone. Okay. That's no bueno. That's like, Donald is looking quite over the hill right now. No disrespect. He's a legend. I love him. Tony Ferguson's coming off a loss. Khabib would be coming off a loss. So if I'm looking up and down the top 4 right now, and I'm trying to figure out who's next in line. If Khabib wins, yeah, you don't go to Dustin because he beat Dustin. I understand that. Why would Nurmagomedov want to fight Dustin Poirier again? And it's not the box office that Conor is. So I know for all you smartasses who are going to hit me with that, save it for me. But if you are Khabib, okay, you're not going to fight Dustin again. But if you're Justin Gaethje, who, by the way, was very, 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 what's the word I'm looking for? Very supportive, giving a lot of love, giving a lot of appreciation to Poirier and Dan Hooker yesterday, saying these guys show that they want to be in the championship picture. If you're Justin Gaethje and you're on the top, everybody's going to go there and they're going to say, oh, well, what's next? It's Conor. Is it Conor? Is it Conor? If Justin Gaethje wins the championship, if he's the undisputed lightweight champion of the world, Conor McGregor deserves a championship fight over Dustin Poirier? Why? Because he knocked him out in a different weight class half a decade ago? I mean, look at the murderer's row that Dustin Poirier has won over his span, where Conor was out there boxing and, getting arrested and all that type of stuff. Look what this guy's put on paper. What he's put in the ring with blood, sweat, and tears. And if he were to have a win over the current lightweight champion of the world, you're telling me that guy doesn't deserve another crack at the title? In what weight class does that happen? where a guy has this kind of resume at a weight class, loses to the champion, comes back, has the fight of the year against a top 5 opponent who you guys were looking to usher into the title picture, and he said, no. Who doesn't get a title shot off of that when he has a win over the champ? He's got a very good argument. So when you ask what's next for Dustin Poirier, here's what I would do. I would sit on my ass. I would recover. I just had a year where I had the longest layoff in my career. I had hip surgery. I had a lot of unknowns about when you were going to be back in action. I would rest up and I would watch where the pieces fall. Go out and fight Tony Ferguson. Why? Tony's coming off a loss. He lost to Gaethje. I beat Gaethje. Why do I have to go beat Tony Ferguson if I'm Dustin Poirier? That's stupid. All respect to Tony. I love him. Look, all these guys in 155, there's not a one among them I don't love watching the fight. That's why it's the best division in the sport. But get the hell out of here. So what's Dustin Poirier going to do next? I hope we don't know a thing about it up until September when we find out who is the reigning lightweight champion of the world. If it's Khabib, then you talk about going to fight Tony Ferguson or trying to wiggle your way into a Conor McGregor fight. Then you have those talks, you have that stress. But if you're talking about trying to be champion of the world and, you're a result away from having a win over the reigning champ, I'm waiting that out, man. Look, if Conor McGregor does come a knocking, if he actually, he won't do it, but if he does, obviously you take the Conor fight. It's life-changing money and stuff like that. And I'm sure, Dustin Poirier, who's got a beautiful family, I'm sure is just like, all right. And I'm sure you'd be like, yes, I finally got that opportunity to get him. But the idea of fighting Tony Ferguson, I don't know, man. I'm just, if anybody has to go fight Tony, in my mind, it's Conor. Because Conor's resume, his last win, although very impressive in beating Cowboy with shoulder strikes, very impressive. In my mind, the resume needs a little bit more polishing. He probably doesn't because of the star that he is. But I'm just saying, if anybody has to fight Tony to prove themselves title worthy, Dustin or Conor, right now it's Conor. If Khabib wins, then Dustin, you could talk about the Ferguson fight. But if Gaethje wins, dude, I got to win over Gaethje. What the hell do I need to go fight Tony Ferguson for? That's stupid. Jeez. Sweaty in the studio today. Anyway, shout out to Dustin Poirier. Shout out to my guy, Dia Davis, for getting a win too, man. Boca Boxing District. Stand up. Good for them. Other results from this. What do we got from this one? We got Mike Perry. He got a win over Mickey Gall. He won via unanimous decision, 29-28. Pretty easy fight to score. Mike Perry got himself a win with his girlfriend in his corner. That's the story. I watched a lot of Mike Perry interviews this week. That dude was on one. I don't disagree with all that he's saying as far as the taking advantage of, he feels like the coaches take advantage, the people around you as fighters take advantage. I can jive with all that because I think that does happen with fighters a lot. I think it happens a ton with fighters. He was talking about afterwards where he's just like, he's got to work out some tax. I guess he's very in trouble with the tax man. So he's got to figure that out. But look, Mike Perry, he got an entertaining fight. He's an entertaining personality, that goes a long way. It was a much needed win for him for sure, because that record was definitely looking dicey from where it was. So, good for him. I think that the girlfriend, it's the thing that's interesting. He says he wants to go train with Yoel Romero, that he wants to move up to 185, seemingly for a showdown with Darren Till. So, Mike Perry might be our neighbor soon. It sounds like he's coming down to Miami. He's going to fight with Yoel down at his camp with Yuli Diaz. And I think that we're going to see a lot of Mike Perry down here in South Florida, which is, look, Mike, it's a great place for people to come when you're running away from taxes. I know you've been in Florida anyway, but South Florida's got a different kind of vibe to it. So we welcome you, sir. We welcome you with open arms. Welcome to South Florida from Mike Perry. So good for him. Maurice Green, he got a submission win, arm triangle choke over Jan Vellante. awesome moment for him. He's like crying, he's bawling his eyes out. I dare you not to get choked up watching Maurice Green's interview with John Anik afterwards. Brendan Allen over Kyle Dawkins. Somebody had it 30-27. I didn't see that. The scores were all over 29-28, 29-27, 30-27. They were all over the place. I thought 29-28 for Brendan Allen was the place to have it. Takashi Sato got a win over Jason Witt. Easy TKO. Quick fight. I was actually walking back from City Place with my wife. We stopped to get a milkshake. They had the fights on. I saw Bruce Buffer. I pay the man for our milkshakes. I turn around and Sato is already victorious. So that was a quick one. Just caught it on the replay for full disclosure there. Let's see. Kama Worthy got a win over Luis Pena. He won via submission. I watched that fight. We were watching that fight in the hotel room. That was actually the last fight my wife and I. I tell you what, man, I was more attracted to my wife. She was sitting there. She was watching the fights with me. My wife, she just, people think, oh, does your wife love sports? No, she doesn't. She doesn't love sports at all. She'll be into stories. She likes stories. You know what she likes? She likes watching real sports. She'll be into sports documentaries. I can get her into those, but watching sports, no. But she was actually watching. She was like, sitting there watching Luis Pena versus Kama Worthy. She liked the guy's nickname, Violent Bob Ross. So we were watching this a little bit, and I thought Luis Pena technically was looking good in a lot of spots. But just from my fat ass watching on television, just looked like Kama was way too strong for him. And really, Luis, who was in good positions with stuff, just couldn't get the muscle on him to put him away. So that looked like his big issue with that. Obviously for Violent Bob Ross, he's another one of those young fighters who's, I think, got a nice little profile as far as his career is concerned. Since coming on the scene, but he's got 500 record now, so got a lot of work to do, but he's been working at American Top Team. He's in good hands there. We'll see what happens with Violent Bob Ross. And Kama Worthy's coming on here, and he's basically been the showstopper for his first two fights. He's come on the scene, and everybody's like, he's supposed to go in there and he's supposed to lose, and he has not. He's come out victorious now in a couple fights in a row, where you've had his win over Devontae Smith, which was back in August, and now this one over Pena. So really, really fun night of fights. Dustin Poirier, shout out. Dan Hooker, shout out. Awesome show by you boys. And as for Dan Hooker, I guess, all I want to say in regards to him is that dude is fun. He is a fun fighter. I do think that he definitely has the potential to do big things in this division. I don't want to say yet that I think Dan Hooker is a championship-worthy fighter. As of yet, I still think that there's still some polishing off that has to go there. But I do think that he is very exciting, and that he is, like many in this division, a lot of fun to watch. So really, really enjoy that night of fights, everybody. Thank you for watching our recap. Get to the rest of the show here on the podcast right after this, and have a great week, everybody.